Tonight I'm going to share with you my research project for Malone University. And it's regarding the Oroville Historical Society here in Oroville. And we're going to talk about the problems that are facing the Historical Society right now. The Society was founded in 1970, and it had several collections that it kept around the city, at the City Hall and at the library and at board members' homes. And the problem that's facing the Society today is that there's not enough sustaining funds to keep it viable for the future. So the problem I'm researching is what can be done to increase funding at the Oroville Historical Society. My research project includes several aspects. First, we're going to talk about the description of the problem, and then I'm going to share info with you from the literature review. And then I'll explain the experimental design, how we do the testing and how we're going to measure those results. I handed out a copy of the PowerPoint so you can follow along. If you have any questions, please write them down on the PowerPoint and we'll cover those at the end of the presentation. To give you a little background of the problem, in 1995, a board member had purchased what used to be the Old Manhattan Restaurant, and then sold it to the Historical Society to hold all the collections that they had. And as you can see from the picture, it was quite a run-down facility. And then in 1999, Sue Comden McIntyre donated the historic Smith Olmsted, which has been the home of Smith Orr and all of his descendants since he came to Oroville. The description of the problem is that we had these buildings, but we had no money in place to pay for these and for the future repair and maintenance. And at the time, we had an executive director in place who scheduled several events at the homestead. We had ladies' teas and concerts, we had weddings, cornhole tournaments, ice cream, social fundraisers, among other events. As you can see from this slide, the income in 2009, when we had the executive director in place, was close to $29,000. The executive director retired that year, so you can see that our income has dwindled steadily since then. We don't have an executive director in place to schedule events, to see them through, so there's no income generating activities at the moment. The importance of the project is that if we don't do something to get funds into the society, then the doors will close and Oroville will lose its history. The mission statement for the Oroville Historical Society is bringing to life in the past lane. The purpose of this organization is to collect, preserve, and share the Oroville area history and to be an active participant in community events. We shall lead in the education of the history of Oroville for our community and its visitors. When we talk about the community, as I said, we'll lose the buildings, we'll lose the collections that are in the buildings, and the community will also miss out on an education of Oroville's history. The literature review that I conducted had shown me several different ideas that we could use to try to generate income for the society. The first topic I'll talk about is diverse sources of income. The second one is marketing plan, and the last one will be educational programs that we'd like to see at the society. In regards to diverse sources of income, Cochran and Carrere say, funding will continue to be an issue for nonprofit organizations. It is imperative to review all funding sources that nonprofits must tap into. So we look at different sources, including individual donations. And those are donations that will be coming from just individuals in the community in the form of membership fees or just general donations. One thing I found that seemed to be very successful with other societies is a direct mail letter writing campaign. And that is something that goes directly to memberships, it goes to the community at large, to businesses, and that is just a direct mail letter asking for donations to help keep our doors open. And the Seneca County Museum in Seneca County was close to having its doors closed until they conducted a letter writing campaign, which helped them stay open. And this is just a bar graph that shows the different sources of income. There's 10 different ones there, and you can see that the direct response or direct mail form of fundraising is near the top. Another source of income is corporate giving. And corporate giving was the only component that was expected to be above its pre-recession level in 2002. This was a study done regarding charitable giving. Businesses like the March of Dimes, they are a collection of several small donations that realize large sums of money. And then the Susan G. Komen for the Cure, that's an example of an organization that people feel strongly about and they want to donate. For an example, at the museum, if people are very passionate about history, they want to give money to the organization. And then the Greater Boston Food Bank, that's an example of giving donations in kind. Some restaurants, they have bread left over or they have food left over and they'll give it to food banks. Fundraising is another big source of income. The more fundraising methods an organization used, the more likely they were to report an increase in revenue, which is exactly what the society needs. So that's something that the society will be looking into. Grants are also a good thing to look into. You can get government grants, although with federal spending being cut, government grants are a lot less available at this time. Now the Historical Society did get a community block grant back in 2009, and they used that money to bring the building, the museum, in repair. They painted it, and we also received awnings for the building to make it look more like the traditional look that it had. Another problem facing the society was a lack of a marketing plan. When the executive director left, again, the marketing stopped. We had no one in place to conduct advertising or publicity for the society. So that's something that the society needs to look into as well. The society does have a Facebook account, but there are other options like Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn that they could be taking advantage of to gain interest into the society. And the last topic we talk about is educational programs. One of the major areas that the society should look into is building a strong partnership with the local school district, which that is underway. That was put into place last year. A board member had met with the superintendent and he got his full backing and to conduct school tours, hold writing contests, and then start a Young Historians program at the high school. Family learning is another area of educational programs that we'd like to look into. The Children's Museum of Indianapolis went a route. They took, instead of such child-related or child-geared exhibits, they did more family learning programs. And once they did that, the visitation in their museum increased 30% over 2 years, and their donations increased 57%. Now I will offer 4 alternatives for my project. Employ diverse sources of income, as we talked about. Utilize marketing and new technologies to promote organizations such as the Twitter and LinkedIn. And then develop educational programs. And then the last alternative is status quo. And we'll discuss those. The hypotheses for each alternative. One, there's 2 hypotheses. If the Oroville Historical Society conducts a letter writing fundraising campaign, then funding will be increased. If the OHS applies for grant money, then funding will increase. And these are statements that this will happen if we take these actions. Alternative 2, if OHS would join social networking sites, then funding will increase. And if OHS implements an online payment system, then funding will increase. And alternative 3, if the OHS develops educational programs, funding will increase. And alternative 4, which is status quo. If the OHS makes no changes, then funding will not increase. The data collection plan, which you'll see it's at the back of your handout, is a copy of a survey. I'm going to send out 50 surveys via email to membership in the Ohio Local Historical Alliance. That's a group made up of all of the Ohio museums and nonprofit organizations, and I will send them to the executive directors or who heads their programming and their societies. The criteria we'll use to measure the data, it will have a chi-square test at a 0.05 significance level, and the status quo will not be tested. If at least one alternative is statistically significant, then it will prove that maintaining the status quo is not a viable alternative. So to conclude, again, we're researching what can be done to increase funding for the Orrville Historical Society. And the description of the problem, again, is we inherited these buildings with no concrete plan to sustain the society. The literature review, I pointed out several examples of other organizations and how they're handling their problems. And the experimental design, I also discussed how we're going to measure the data that we receive from the surveys. So at this time, I will take questions if anyone has questions.
Is the director a paid position?
The director was a paid position, yes, and that's why we need to generate income so that we can get a paid director. Because right now there are no programs in place, there are no events planned, no fundraising scheduled.
Do you feel that the Orrville public is aware that there is a funding need for the Historical Society?
I don't believe that because, again, we don't have a marketing plan in place to get the word out. We do have a publicity chair, but it's a new position, and you know, again, if we don't have any programs in place, we can't promote anything in that way. But as far as letting people know, that's what we need to do, that we need to get the marketing plan in place to let people know. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I appreciate your time, and have a good evening.